Hello and welcome. Today we are going to go ahead and take a look at the Resurgent. So the Resurgent started off as me going, I really want to fly a miniature Star Destroyer. Yeah, that's about where my thought process started and ended on this ship. Um, so actually I did see a thing on Reddit where somebody went ahead and did something similar with the Deimos wing into the Nova cowling into the Stroud cap C, I think it is, to go ahead and get a kind of smoother shape. And that really inspired me to go ahead and build this ship. Um, so when I was building this ship, I of course started out with, the general shape, and then was like, this looks kind of like a Star Destroyer. Let me lean into that aesthetic a little bit. And then I was trying to figure out what to put on each of the levels to go ahead and make it still flow okay enough ish. And started adding some cargo, and before you know it, it fell into my Leviathan category of ships. That means that this ship has at least 10,000 cargo capacity and at least 1,000 fuel while being a Class C ship. Um, Beyond that, though, this is still designed more as a combat ship. So I have 13 beds on board, a crew capacity of 10, and I still have my armory and my infirmary. So you can, of course, tweak the 2x1 Habs around to make whatever you would like, but overall, I was fairly happy with this ship. So enough talking about it. Let's go ahead, take a tour. I'll show you how it's built, and then how well it holds up in combat. So as is my preference, we are immediately entering into the 2x1 armory. This one is a Deimos. Most of the Habs for this one are Deimos, not because I really like them, but because they're at the top of the list. Moving forward from the armory, we find our infirmary, and we also find our docking access. Moving backwards through the armory, we open this door here, and we find ourselves in the 3x3 Deimos cargo hall. Now, if we come forward, we find ourselves with a ladder that goes up, and we go into the companionway here, which then leads into a 2x1 all-in-one. Now, we should have a door leading back. Instead, we have to come back down to the cargo hall, run all the way back here, and then jump up here to get into the other 2x1 all-in-one. Yes, I am also really happy with this configuration. Luckily, I have two more ships after this, and then I'm going to start rebuilding things using mods. Very first thing I'm getting is Play Stores Yourself. Alright, so jumping up 2 levels, we get another 2x1 all-in-one. And then we can just come on back here. And we find ourselves in the battle stations. Right over here, we have the door off the battle station, which is leading into the one Taiohab, which is, of course, the captain's quarters. And then finally, the ladder up leads us into that top-mounted Kontiki bridge. Alright, and that is the tour. Now let's go ahead and see how the ship is built. All right. So, what color is this ship? Gray. What's the other color? Gray. What's the third color? Gray. Yeah, we're all gray out here. All right, enough of that. Let's go ahead and select all and delete it. And then we are going to go ahead and build the ship. So for this ship, I started out with the NG6 landing bay. And then directly on top of that, I went ahead and I placed my armory. Forward of that, I have my infirmary. Well, that doesn't look right. Let's shift that back one. And then back of that, I have my cargo hull. For my next level up, I have a companionway. I have an all-in-one. And I have an all-in-one. Moving up from here, I have an all-in-one. And then I have my battle stations. And then finally, I'm going to scroll all the way on down here until I get to the Tayo 2x1 top. And I'm going to grab my captain's quarters and place that right there. Alright. Then, let me come to the forward of my ship. I'm going to grab my Hope 11 Docker. And then at the back of my ship, let's go ahead and grab that Kontiki B600. And there you have it. That is all the habitable space on this ship. Alright, so what's next? Well, let's go ahead and grab my fuel tanks. I'm using two 900T HE3 tanks. Then, I am going ahead and grabbing the J51 Gamma Drive. Note, I could use the J52, however, that's some extra mass and extra cost for no noticeable improvement. And then I'm going to grab the Pinch 8Z. Alrighty. What's next? Well, let's go ahead and come down here. And coming back from the landing bay, I have a line of cargo. Using the 20T hauler cargoes. And then at the end, I have the 10T hauler cargo. Note, if you wanted to, you could use the shielded hauler cargo. It's a noticeable drop in the amount of cargo, but 320 shielded cargo is probably more than enough for your ship. Next, we're going to come on up here, and we're going to grab 3 S204s on each side. And there you have it, 13,645 cargo. Alright, now from here I need to go ahead and I need to start adding in some structural components before I can add my landing gear or my engines. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to come on over here to the structural tab. I'm going to scroll on down until I get to the Stroud nose cap C. And I'm going to place one right here, even with the armory coming off of the cargo hull. Then I'm going to scroll on up till I get to the Nova cowling. I'm going to take this and I'm going to flip it into place so the back of the cowling overlaps with the front of the nose cap C. Then I'm going to scroll up again until I get to the Deimos wing. And then I'm going to flip that into place so the back of the Deimos ring overlaps the front of the Nova cowling. Then I'm going to take these three components, I'm going to copy them right back here. Then I'm going to take these three components and I'm going to copy them up a level. Then I'm going to take these two components, so without the Deimos wing, and I'm going to copy that up one level. And then I'm going to take these two components, again minus the Deimos wing, and copy that up one level. Then I'm going to repeat all of this on the other side of the ship. Just like so. Alright. And now that I have more or less that dagger shape that I was looking for, I'm going to go ahead on top of this all-in-one. I'm going to place my shield, which is going to be the Assurance SG-1800. And then I'm going to come back on over to the Structural tab. I'm going to scroll down until I get to the Shroud Nose Cap B. I'm going to place one on top of the Infirmary. I'm going to duplicate off to the side, and then I'm going to flip the other into place on top of the all-in-one and over the shield. Alrighty. Then, to kind of finish off my structural pieces, go ahead and find the Nova Cowlings. And I am placing two Nova Cowlings on each side of the upper structure here. Finally, over the reactor, I have another Nova Cowling. This is the 1LTF. And now, finally at this point, I can go ahead and add my engines. Now for this ship, I am using 6 SAL 6330s. Again, these are not the best engines, but they are the best that you can get without a quest. And you can see that I am placing one engine that is even with the battle stations and the galley and cargo holds. One beneath that, there's a spot open in front of it. And then a one off to the side connected to these nose caps. So duplicate that onto the other side of the ship. Alrighty. Now from here, we just need to have our weapons and our landing gear. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here, and then I'm going to come back on over to the Structural tab, and I'm going to grab some Deimos hulls. Actually, that connects to that. Alright. So these two Deimos hulls I'm going to duplicate upwards, and they are going to overlap with, pull this off, the 900T HE3 tank here. The reason I'm doing this is this HE3 tank does not have a bottom connection point, so I need to get that somehow, and I'm also just kind of filling this in with that Deimos hull. Then, we're going to come on the underside of the ship. So the nose cap has a connection point on the front and the back. Going to the rear connection point, we are going to come on over to the landing gear, and we're going to grab the NG20 landing gear 4. Duplicate that onto the other side, and then we're going to do the NG20 landing gear. This is the kind of mid variation that is not wide. And we're putting 4 of these on each side, just like so. So now looking at it, once the landing gear goes up, we basically just have 3 little ridges down the bottom, keeping that general daggerish shape. Alrighty. So what are we going to do from here? All that we have left is the weapons. Now you can of course put on whatever weapons you would like. For this particular ship, I ended up going with 4 PBO 175 auto helion beams. And I need to pull these 2 Nova Cowlings off in order to place them. And then on top of this, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to grab the Obliterator 250 MEV Auto Alpha Beam. And then I'm going to flip these back into position. And then I'm going to pull off this Nova Cowling. Alright, fine. Won't let me do that. So let me come on over to my weapons, scroll all the way on down, and I'm going to grab the PBO 300 Auto Alpha Turret. And then I'm going to place that, and it's connected to the hardpoint on top of this Nova Cowling. Kind of hidden under the Stroud nose cap, so you are going to need to flip it into position. Okay. Then, you go ahead and duplicate this again. And that fits on perfectly fine right there. So you can see I have the 175, Obliterator 175, and then the auto turrets. So that's 5 weapons on each of these wings. And then I'm going to repeat the process over here. And then finally, because I'm using the Obliterator 250s, I need one more, and I just went ahead and I placed that up here. Do note I do need to drop it into position, which means I just kind of place it there. Another thing that you could do is you could go ahead and put a what's called equipment plate down underneath this and then hide it under here. Or you could look at swapping these obliterators out for something else, so that way you have room to go ahead and attach your weapons wherever. There are plenty of weapon hardpoints available on this design, and of course you can always go ahead and add in some equipment plates somewhere. Alright. And it looks like I am missing something. Let me check and see if it is a structural component. Nope. And I have my shield. I have my reactor. Ah. I also ended up hiding a pair of H-30 Atlas tanks somewhere on the ship. 650, 13, for a total of 2,100 fuel. That may or may not be a little excessive, but you can just hide these literally wherever. I think that this was originally from before I went ahead and put the 900Ts on. And because I hid them, I forgot that they were on the ship. So that last part is completely optional. You probably have more than enough fuel to get wherever you want to go. But while we're talking about hiding things, you could very easily, under these nose caps, hide some additional cargo with, like, say, the 400 cm ballast cargo. And see, I can just kind of place that right there, flip it into place, and ta-da, I have more cargo. While still keeping the same general aesthetic. Alright, so let's paint the ship. Gray. There we go. So again, this ship is in general designed to be your do-everything combat/hauling ship. If you wanted pure gameplay purposes, I would probably look at swapping this infirmary out for, say, a workshop. And then you can just like get a pharmaceutical lab in somewhere. Or you could look at going ahead and swapping this 3x3 cargo hull out for, say, a 2x3 mess hall, and then a 3x1 or a 2x1 like workshop and a what's it called? Companionway or something like that. There's plenty of room for you to go ahead and make some small adjustments. But enough of that. Let's go ahead and take this ship out for a test drive. All right. Now that I've got my power properly assigned, let's head on out to Serpentis and see how well this holds up. So despite having a great deal of mass, this ship still does handle fairly nicely. It's by no means a fighter jet, but it's definitely something that you can go ahead and use as your primary ship. And it is also still light enough that it's got some reasonable boost too. Alright, some hostile activity. Let's go check that out. Alrighty. And now that we're done picking stuff up, we can go ahead and wait for our engines to finish repairing in combat. Now, I don't know about you, but this is definitely giving me that whole Star Destroyer aesthetic flying around. Though, for it to be a real Star Destroyer, of course, it would have to be a much larger ship. But if you're playing without mods, let's do a little bit of interior flying. And of course, alright, let's see if there's any fun to be had here.
Alrighty.
And on that note, if you watched all the way to the end, thank you. And I will see you in the next one.